Oh yeah, it is definitely feeling like summer, buds. It's like 80 degrees out today. Pretty much the end of the day right now because I'm filming at 7 o'clock at night, but oh well. I realized I just did my whole intro and it was blurry, so let's do that again. How's it going, everyone? If you don't know me, my name is Colin. Hope your day is going well. I make snowmobile as well as diesel truck content. So if you love the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing because I got a lot of videos coming your way. Today we're going to be talking about snowmobile maintenance, specifically for Polaris sleds. But if you do have a Skidoo or an Arctic Cat or a Yamaha snowmobile, a lot of these will apply to you. Just check your owner's manual if there's any other steps that you need to take for summarizing it. Now there's 7 things that I do with my snowmobiles to get them ready for summer, as well as I got a couple extra / optional ones that you guys can do if you really want to go that extra step to summarize your sled. So let's get right into it. Now, unfortunately, my sled is all taken apart right now, but I can still show you the key things that I do when I summarize a snowmobile. Now, step number 1 is the first thing that I do, and I use a fuel stabilizer to add into the gas system. I'll add the recommended amount to the gas tank, however many gallons that I have in at the time, and then run it for 5 to 10 minutes. Let the fuel stabilizer get all inside the fuel system and everything, and that'll just prevent corrosion and varnishing and gumming up of your fuel system to keep it fresh until the next season. Now, Polaris recommends that you fill up your gas tank pretty much full of non-ethanol, non-oxygenated fuel in order to keep as much water and condensation out of the fuel system as possible. I would also recommend that, as well as using a fuel stabilizer to just help protect your fuel system. And also, as a side note to that, if you don't know where to get non-oxygenated, non-ethanol fuel, I use an app called Pure Gas. It'll list every non-ethanol station within your area. Number 2 has to do with the battery. If your sled comes with a battery, I would recommend taking it out of the sled, putting it on like a workbench, and putting a battery tender / maintainer on it over the summer to keep it up at that level all summer long, so that next year it's basically a fresh battery. And one thing that I would definitely recommend is getting one that has the cables that you can actually attach to the battery, so you can just plug it directly into that plug instead of having to take the battery out each time to either charge the battery up or put it on the maintainer or something. Number 3 is going to be checking all of your electrical connectors and seeing if there's any kind of corrosion or anything like that in any of the connectors. Cleaning those connectors and applying dielectric grease to prevent any kind of corrosion in the future or over the summer. With the Polaris sled, some of them have had an issue with corrosion buildup inside the electrical connectors. So what I've seen from a few dealers around here in Washington is that they'll actually, part of their freight setup is they'll go through all of the connectors and spray that dielectric grease in there to prevent that. Now, some dealers don't do that, but I would recommend doing that at the end of the season or when you get a brand new sled or something like that, just to prevent any kind of corrosion in the future, whether you have Polaris or an Arctic Cat or Skidoo or anything like that. Now with the Arctic Cat and Skidoo, I don't know if that's any kind of an issue, but with the Polarises, it's not a huge issue, but they aren't completely weatherproof connectors right now. And I have seen that a few times happen to where that was the actual issue with a few friends that had electrical issues, is that there was a little bit of corrosion buildup within one connector, and it was messing with either the runnability of the sled or the heaters weren't working or something like that, just little random problems here and there. And it's always just a good idea to check and make sure. Number 4 is going to be greasing the chassis and the suspension. So at least for the RMK and Axis sleds, I can show you from the skid on my previous sled. There's a few of them on the Axis RMK skids. One of them is near the front track shock, and then you actually have 3 on this lower arm right here, 2 on the back side right here, and then 1 on the front. And then you've got 3 more right here at the top, and then 2 more at the bottom of the arm right here and right here. Now, one thing I would definitely recommend if you really want to take it the extra mile is taking the entire skid out and actually greasing the shafts that run on the inside here. It's pretty easy once you've got the skid out to get those out. That is what those Zerk fittings are for, is that shaft that runs along here to mount the skid to the tunnel itself. Next up is going to be cleaning and inspecting the clutches, both your primary and your secondary. Now what you're looking for is like a broken primary spring or anything damaged within the clutch to see if you need to replace anything. And actually on mine at the end of the season, I had found that the primary spring in mine was actually broken. Now, to be honest, I'm not really sure when the primary spring did break, but I did find it when I was taking the primary clutch off my motor that it was broken. And I'm not really sure when it broke, but it is kind of unfortunate. Thankfully, the primary springs are only about 20 or 30 bucks, so it's not too bad. I've already taken it out, as well as I took the clutch weights out, and I still need to clean up the actual face. And to clean the faces on the clutches themselves, I pretty much just use an isopropyl alcohol to clean the faces really well. The only other thing I would check on the clutches themselves is actually the bushings for the weights. Sometimes those bushings will wear out and you won't really notice it too much, but I have seen it happen before. Just check them, make sure they're not worn out, clean them up, and throw them back in. Now I realize that some people may not be comfortable with cleaning or inspecting clutches, as well as the Arctic Cat and Skidoos are going to be different than what I just explained. So if you don't feel up to the tasks doing something like that, just have a dealer or ask a friend to help you out. Number 6 is going to be getting the rear of your sled up off the ground, whether that's with a track stand or if you have a beam or something like that to where you can use a ratchet strap to get it up off the ground. And we'll actually use my roommate's sled as an example here. So this track stand right here is about $30 on Amazon. I'll link it in the description below. And what that's doing is actually getting the sled up off the ground enough to where it's letting the track hang loose a little bit so that it's not putting a lot of pressure on the paddles, making the paddles bend over, especially if you're storing it for the summer or just a long period of time. And in my theory, I think that it helps out with the rear shocks as well, kind of putting a little bit less pressure on them. Whether that's completely accurate, I have no idea, but that's what I've always done with mine. I've never had any issues, and I've always had suspension last me a while. And finally, number 7, the last one, is putting dryer sheets or mothballs inside your sled so that you're keeping any kind of like mice or rats, any little rodents or anything like that out of your sled while it's sitting for the summer. When I was working as a service advisor in Seattle, we would actually see a lot of cars that had rodent damage. When the rats or mice would get up into the cars and into the motor compartments and actually eat at the wiring harnesses and cause a bunch of different electrical problems. Several times customers had to actually replace the entire electrical system, and something like that unfortunately is not covered under warranty. And if that happens on your sled, potentially a manufacturer might not cover that because it's on a defect of the sled itself. Unfortunately, it's an outside force damaging the sled. So it's better to just be safe than sorry and put a couple of dryer sheets or mothballs somewhere inside of the sled just to help out. And just obviously don't forget that they're in your sled when you go to pull it out for the first time next season. Now the optional or additional items that if you want to go the extra step summarizing your sled is going to be like removing the drive belt. One thing I noticed mid-season with my sled on the drive belt is that after about 1,500 miles on the same belt is that it was actually noticeably and definitely a lot thinner because it had worn down over those 1,500 miles. And just checking the belt just to see if there's any kind of excessive wear or damage or anything like that. If it's starting to come apart, then obviously you probably want to replace it. If it's just a little bit worn and you think that it's got some life left on it, I would probably just put a new belt on it the next season and just use that worn belt as a backup. So for this next one, I actually saw that Polaris recommends this for summarizing your sled. Personally, I have never done it before. So again, if you want to go the extra mile with your sled, you may want to do this. And that involves fogging the engine. And basically what that does is that it prevents rust inside your motor. Now to do that, essentially all you're going to do is remove both spark plugs, spray that fogging oil down each cylinder hole for about 5 seconds or so, and then without putting your spark plugs back in, turn the motor over a couple times to get that oil through the motor so that it's nice and coating everything. And then just reinstalling the old plugs, and then the next season start and run your motor for a few minutes to let that fogging oil burn off, and then just replace those plugs. Alright, and that's all of the tips that I've got for you guys to summarize your sled. It's pretty easy. It'll probably take you like an afternoon or something like that if you're doing just the basic or even everything that I listed off in here. But that will help keep your sled in good shape for a long time. Now if you think there's anything that I missed or anything that you guys do that might be different, let me know in the comments below. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to hit the little bell so that you know when I upload a new video. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.